Okay, for question number 31, we have to name and explain the phenomenon of light due to which path of beam of light becomes visible when it enters a smoke-filled room through a small hole. तो हमें वो फिनोमिना का नाम और उसे एक्सप्लेन करना है जिसकी वजह से लाइट का पाथ दिखना शुरू हो जाता है जब वो एक स्मोक फिल्ड रूम में किसी होल के थ्रू एंटर करती है और उस फिनोमिना का नाम है टिंडल इफेक्ट एंड दैट इज because of the scattering of light. Now we have to explain this phenomena. So in this case, we can write that when a beam of light, so the name of the phenomena is Tyndall effect, and it says that when when a beam of light, it strikes the particles of smoke or the fine particles of smoke. When a beam of light strikes fine particles of smoke, it is reflected diffusely. Diffusely means in all directions. It is reflected diffusely, and hence the path of light becomes visible. Okay. Also, it asks also state the dependence of color of light we receive on the size of the part of the medium through which the beam of light passes. Means कौन से colors, कौन से particles जिनका size अलग अलग है scatter करेंगे, तो mainly very fine particles जो है जिनका size जो है, the very fine particles जो है वो light of shorter wavelength को scatter करते हैं. So very fine particles they scatter lights of shorter wavelength. So in this case we can write that now uh, the scattering of light, it makes the particles visible. So for Tyndall effect, we can, this is called the Tyndall effect. We can also write here the scattering of light. Okay, now the very fine particles, the color of the scattered light depends on the size of the scattering particles. We can write here that we have to mention here that because it's asked, state the dependence of color of light we receive on size of the particle of the medium. So the color of scattered light, it depends on size of the scattering particles. Now, जो very fine particles हैं, they scatter mainly blue light of shorter wavelength. So very fine particles, I'm going to write which color is scattered by which particles of size. So very fine particles mainly scatter blue light. And while particles of large size, particles of large size, they scatter light of longer wavelengths. So very fine particles, they scatter light, mainly scatters a blue light of shorter wavelength, while the if the size of the scattering particle increases, the large size of the scattering particles, they scatter light of a longer wavelength. That means that on now the very fine particles they scatter light of shorter wavelength. If the particle size is large, they scatter light of longer wavelength. And now if the size of the scattering particles is large enough, then scattered light may even appear white. Now let's say if the size of scattering particles is large enough, the light may appear white as well. Enough, then the scattered light may even appear white. Okay, this is how this has to be answered. Let's move on to the next question.